I'm back with another podcast of Women In. I am so excited about my guest today, but before you get to hear from my guest, you're going to hear more about what Women is all about. So this podcast celebrates women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are lifting them up. These are super cool people that have been in my life, and they're going to share their stories of how they inspire the women around them and support women through all the spaces that they're in. This podcast is all about being disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It's uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. And really what this is what I'm passionate about, and that is breaking down barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guests and where they came into my life, whether it's through the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, or Tony Will Coaching. And some of these people happen to be family and friends as well. Today, my guest is a friend, and we work together. And I'm really excited to welcome the Commissioner of the ECHL, Ryan Crelin. Hi, Ryan.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
So, Ryan, the first question I asked all my guests is, how did we meet? And so I love to hear this because it's funny how, as I've been doing these podcast interviews, my recollection is different from their recollection. So I want to hear how you remember when you and I first met almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, so specific location, I think, is Zazio's restaurant at the Radisson in downtown Kalamazoo. Was in Kalamazoo for a site visit in preparation for our Hockey Heritage event we were doing a few months later. Mm-hmm. And you had just joined the team, I believe, maybe a few months, maybe even just weeks. I don't necessarily recall. Yeah. I think we had spoken on the phone, but then this was the first time we actually got to meet in person and really begin what was an immediate adventure to plan for that event.
Yeah, and what's wild is we're doing this event again.
Yeah, yes. Talk about coming full circle.
What did we say after that event?
That we would never do it again, and it'd be somebody else's responsibility.
And boy, were we wrong.
Yeah, we nailed it.
We did nail it. And I remember the first time I saw you, because I talked to you on the phone, I'm like, gosh, he's way younger than I thought he would be because the Jersey accent. And this is my first foray into hockey. I pictured you different than what you were. And I immediately was like, oh, I like this guy. So
now we're both a lot older, maybe not wiser, but definitely older.
And I think we're both, and no offense to either one of us, maybe a couple pounds heavier.
Couple? Yeah. Yeah. I look like a Weight Watchers commercial in reverse.
Well, we tread up and down. Our jobs are not exactly stress-free, right?
No doubt. Lots of stress, lots of travel, and busy lives.
Yeah. So let's talk about your career, because you have a really interesting career path. I mean, all of it's been with ECHL. But for the listeners that don't know a lot about hockey, because there's going to be people from my world that are listening to this that are not necessarily in the hockey world, that are, like I said, come from all different parts of my life. And hopefully maybe I'll get people listening to this that aren't related to me. Wouldn't that be amazing? But tell everyone what a commissioner does for a pro sports team or a pro sports league.
So I guess a little background on the ECHL. We're a 29-team league across North America. For folks familiar with baseball model or development model, we would be AA. Then there's AAA, which is the AHL, and then the NHL, which is Major Pro. So all of our teams are affiliated with NHL and AHL clubs, one being the Kalamazoo Wings. And, from a commissioner standpoint, lots on the go, managing both the business and hockey side of the operation. And for me specifically, too, probably a little bit more ingrained than perhaps other commissioners, because I think you want to touch on this. I kind of grew up here, started as an intern 18 years ago, have held a bunch of different positions. And quite honestly, in minor league or development sports, each position wears a lot of hats. And so just trying to manage the league as a whole, our owners, our governors, as well as the day-to-day operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot. And you've been with the league now, is it 18 years?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I got to go back and count. But yeah, I think 18.
About 18 years. And then, I've been here almost 10 years. And so one of the things as in part of my role, so how I work with you is I'm the governor for the Kalamazoo Wings,
Yep.
which you know, and but prior to that, so I've had different roles, all kind of doing the same thing with the K Wings, but help with the overall governing of the league in terms of direction, expansion, health, wellness, vitality of the league, players union. Like that's how we work. You
Yep.
kind of run that part. We, as a board, we help guide you and guide the
Yeah.
league
Yeah. We
through.
facilitate it and then essentially bring it to the board for vote, for various elements in terms of moving forward. Again, both on the business and hockey side.
Yeah. One of the stories I talk about when I get asked to speak about my role with Kalamazoo Wings, because people find what I do for a living fascinating, which people probably find what you do fascinating, but even more so on my end because I'm a woman. And I didn't really recognize this when my first few years here in Kalamazoo, because I just was like trying to pull the Titanic out of the iceberg back then. But one day I'm sitting on board of governors and I looked around and I'm like, wow, there are not very many women here. I think there maybe were three of us, maybe. So when you started 18 years ago, how many women were in that room, in the board of governors room that you recall, if any?
Maybe one, two.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so and as you know, I called you up one day and I don't even know when this started, but I was like, okay, I'm really passionate about this. I want to talk about this. And it's led into this real, as you know, I'm really passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion for many reasons, but it really was born from the fact that I didn't take this job. I didn't run into Wings Event Center with my bra on fire 10 years ago and say, I am woman, hear me roar. Right? Like that was not my intent at all. But I have found that there are times where it can be challenging to be a woman in a very male dominated industry. So as you've seen more women walk into that boardroom, we're slow. I mean, we're chipping slow.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
What are your, what are your thoughts on it? Where do you stand? And I know, I'm biased because I call you about this all the time. I'm like, I want to do this. I'm so enthusiastic, and there's no stopping me. As you know, I'm like a train.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I think it shows the growth and perhaps bring a different viewpoint. I mean, personally, I try and treat everyone equally, man, woman, doesn't matter. I like to think I treat everybody the same. But I do think it's great for the sport or sports in general to get more women involved in what is undeniably, looking at statistics, a male dominated industry. And that's not just in the boardroom. I would say it's across all positions. However, it's not just the boardroom either here, because I do think, like, looking at our summer meetings and our front office staff, more females than ever are getting involved, working together, communicating. We have our led by you, the Women in Sports networking event at this year's event. And so I do think the statistics are changing and more women are getting involved over time. I don't think it's a snap your fingers and it's 50-50 overnight.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I mean, who are the women in your life? Like, I mean, obviously you came from a woman. So, I like
believe so.
I think you did. But like, who are the women in your life that are important to you? And
So I was going to go sequentially here. I mean, I was actually going to start with my grandmother. She's obviously since passed away, but I grew up across the street from my grandparents. And so I always had both the grandmother and grandfather across the street. But my grandmother really helped, raise me because she was so close and watched us when my parents were at work. And so spent a lot of time with her. And I give her credit for my ability to recall just playing memory and crossword puzzles and word finds and all of that stuff. And then secondly, my mother, who is a tough cookie, small little Italian lady, makes really good sauce, but, taught me a whole bunch of things. And her and my father combined gave me my work ethic. And, I will never fault them for that. And then certainly my wife, we've been married now over 10 years, which is hard to believe. But she allows me to do this job because it's so much on a day-to-day basis, a lot out of the house, and travel away. I mean, there are times where I'll be in the office Monday through Friday, get on a plane, be gone Friday, Saturday, and then either get home late Sunday or early Monday morning, and it starts all over again. So, she has to be a real tough cookie to manage the house, 3 kids, and everything that goes along with that. With me being, kind of distant or, not available a lot of the time because this job requires so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, your wife is fabulous. I've had the opportunity to spend time with her many times over the years. I was like, well, the first time I met her, I was like, I need to know who is putting up with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, just on that note, I think that speaks to the industry. And maybe you were going to touch on this with Mrs. Kelly's induction into the ECHL Hall of Fame, but often in a male sport as well, players, coaches, the women behind the scenes are having to manage the household because not only are their husbands at work, they don't come home at night because they're on the road half the year. And so without those women, the sport doesn't tick.
Yeah, let's talk about Mrs. Kelly. I'm glad you brought up June. So one of the things I was in Ryan's ear about when it came to women in sports was the ECHL Hall of Fame. And so before we go into that story, tell everyone what the Hall of Fame is, so people, because not everyone knows what the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
Remember, I didn't even know what a CCM was.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think a lot of organizations have halls of fame, at least certainly sports organizations, but other industries as well. And it's an opportunity to recognize those both on and off the ice in hockey for their contributions to the sport, and in our case, more specifically, our league. And so each year now, well, let me take that back. Our league is now 36 years old. Our Hall of Fame started, 16 years ago, 15 or 16 years ago. So each year we'll induct 4 or 5 folks into the ECHL Hall of Fame, either for their on ice or off ice contributions.
Yeah. And so I said to Ryan after, because I've gone to many of these. We hosted one in Kalamazoo. We're going to host another Hall of Fame dinner this January in Kalamazoo. And not this year, not in January, but the January prior, so January of 23, I was looking at the past inductees, because you guys put together a nice pamphlet, for lack of a better word, marketing piece. And I'm like, reading the names, I'm like, there are no women in this Hall of Fame. And I marched my little Italian butt right up to you. And I said, there are no women in here. And you said to me, well, nominate one, Tony. And I said, fair enough. And so I was like, June Kelly, right? And so I nominated June last year, and she was inducted. And it was personally to see, number one, I love Mr. and Mrs. Kelly, Patrick and June. They're just the sweetest couple ever.
Yeah.
And what they did to start the league, and what June, how she contributed when Mr. Kelly was off doing what you're doing now, right? And she's so strong and just well spoken, and just I don't have enough words to describe her, but it was I don't often cry at work, once in a while, but my ankle's broken. I hobble up to the stage at the end, and I'm sort of bawling when I was talking to her, because it just meant so much to me to see her be the first woman inducted into the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
No doubt. I'm so glad you did it. There's a lot of people that are thrilled that you did it across the ECHL or in the ECHL Hall of Fame, and probably no one more than Mr. Kelly. I don't think he would want to nominate Mrs. Kelly because she's his wife, but no one was more thrilled than him to see her get into the Hall of Fame. And in that moment, I don't know if there was a dry eye in the house. You may have led the way with most on dry eyes, but it was a pretty emotional moment. And Mr. Kelly's line of, he shook the hands of the 63 past ECHL Hall of Fame members, but this one he was going to kiss was just awesome.
Ugh. It still gives me chills.
Yeah, no doubt.
And
No
the
doubt.
story that I know I've told you this, but there's another woman in my life, and I'm going to connect the dots here. So, my grandmother was instrumental in my life as well. She passed away when I was 15 of lung cancer, but I loved it. She wore horn-rimmed glasses. She smoked Virginia Slims. She swore all the time. She wore like polyester shirts. She was awesome, and her name was June. And
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I didn't know that.
yeah, and Chloe, my youngest daughter, her middle name is June
Yeah,
after my
okay.
grandmother. And so I told June Kelly, I said, there's so much in this right now, her being the first woman and being on the same name as my grandmother, and it was just yeah, it still means a lot, and I know it always will. So I'm really proud of that, and proud of the ECHL. And what did she say in her speech? Like she was answering the phones, like she was doing all kinds of shit back then. Like
Yeah,
just to get the league going.
yeah. I mean, well, quite honestly, it was only her and Mr. Kelly. And she was there to support her husband or her partner and make this thing tick for their family. They also had 3 sons. Now, the sons were older at that point, but still, they were there to see it through. And eventually they hired a 3rd employee, but it was really the 2 of them working hand in hand to get it up off the ground.
Yeah, and when you think about this was 1988, right? And so
Correct.
you and I, in our roles now, if they hadn't have done what they did, we wouldn't be doing this right now.
No doubt. No doubt. And a lot of other people wouldn't have a place to play hockey or be a part of hockey without them. And if you want to look at the figures, it's kind of scary how many hockey leagues have come and gone and didn't survive. But because of their integrity and their work ethic, this one made it through.
Yeah, and what characteristics would you use to describe June? Like what are her personality traits because this sport, working in pro sports in general, as you've talked about with your job, and I mean, I'm on the road a lot, but not nearly as much as you. I mean, we do not work traditional hours.
No,
And
yeah.
so,
I mean, she's kind of like a grandmother to me, but she's a tough cookie. And, I'll make snide remarks and she'll give them right back to me because we have that type of relationship. But, she's gritty. I don't know how else to say it.
I love that word. And I actually just read a book, as you know, I love to read, and I just read a great book called Grit by Angela Duckworth, and it talks about that. It's specific for women, and grittiness is it's not everyone doesn't have that. And so when I picture her, you're definitely right. She definitely has grit.
Yeah, yeah. Again, going to do whatever it takes to see it through. And, in that whole, she's not a boastful person by any stretch of the means, but in that Hall of Fame moment when, she had her moment on the ice, I mean, she was loving every minute of it. And quite frankly, unfortunately, she probably never had that moment behind the scenes, answering the phones, working the desks, doing the checkbook at the time. So to let her have that moment was absolutely fantastic. Large crowd on national TV. And it's my understanding she went to bed wearing her Hall of Fame jersey.
Well, she loved that ring.
Yeah, no doubt.
What
No doubt.
woman doesn't love a good ring? I was so happy to be part of that. That was fantastic. I know we all were. So, yeah, and I'm personally proud of that. So I didn't, I tell you this. I'm not ashamed to say that one day I'd like to be in the Hall of Fame as well. But I didn't think I deserved to be the first woman at all. There were women before me, and she was definitely the one.
Yeah, well, and Mr. Kelly was the first man inducted into the Hall of Fame, so this was rightfully fitting.
Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of me being in the Hall of Fame, I wrote my eulogy. Do you know that?
So, well, yeah, you told me the premise of it. I haven't heard the eulogy or.
It's in my eulogy because what you do when you write, like I set goals for myself every
Right,
year.
you write your eulogy and then work backwards.
Yeah, and it's in there.
Yeah, I understand.
So I talk about what I'm reading a lot. Do you have time to read? Do you read books? I don't even know. Are you reading anything?
I've read 2 books this year. Um, I I don't know if I would read more than 4 in a year,
Hmm.
uh, but I do read, usually with purpose or something specific.
Hmm.
The 2 books that I've read recently are Super Communicators by Charles, I think it's pronounced Duhigg. He's the guy who also did the Power of Habit. I don't know if you know that book.
I do.
And then there's another book that I read called What Every Body is Saying, and it's written by an FBI or former FBI agent about reading and interpreting body language. So it's pretty interesting.
Wait, do you do this so you can read the body language
No
at
doubt.
Board of Governors
No doubt.
meetings?
No doubt.
What does my body language tell you?
Hey, no secret shall be aired during the podcast.
I'm pretty transparent. I'm probably annoyed by somebody. But I'm interested in this book. Did you find it a good read? Like, did you find it useful, like tools to read body language?
Yeah, I certainly like the anecdotal stuff from his FBI days and what's there. And I do want to say from an underlying premise, and this is a theme throughout the book, there's no, I think everyone's looking for a tell for lying or something like that. There isn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about looking at everything in the aggregate and trying to decipher how somebody's feeling. And again, anecdotally, fascinating stuff. There's a story in there from he was hired by a business to sit down with one side of the table, and both sides were at the table, and they were going through the contract line by line. And when they got to a certain part, he could tell from the other guy's body language that it was an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so he called that to their attention, and they were about to move on, and he stopped them and said, like, "Hey, what's wrong here? We need to address this." And then it ended up being like a massive thing that they needed to work through. And they would have ended up just signing that deal. It would have boiled over at some point during the term of the agreement, but they got in front of it because he just read the guy's body language. So pretty interesting stuff.
That is interesting. I might have to check that out because
And well, go ahead.
No. You keep going. I want to hear more.
All right, more fascinating tidbits from this. So a lot of body language is instinctual from, hundreds of thousands of years ago, inbred into the human species. So there's something called eye blocking. So if I did this and you're talking to me, that should tell you that, I'm discomforted or I don't want to see what you're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally because you don't want to see it. You're blocking your eyes. So you may just think that's a learned behavior that everyone, when I do that, I've seen other people do that. So that's my signal to you that, I don't want to hear it. Apparently, based on the study, children that are born blind who have never seen in their life, when they hear something they don't want to hear, they'll eye block. When in actuality, they should be covering their ears because they don't want to hear it. But they'll eye block because instinctually, your body just doesn't want to see it.
That's
fascinating.
Interesting. That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's nuts to me.
Yeah, because I think about I think I do that.
Well, but you've seen your whole life. The reason that's so interesting to me from the study standpoint is those folks have never seen, but they still eye block.
Yeah. No, that it's even more. Yeah, that is fascinating. Huh.
You know what? Final tidbit, then we're going to move on. Most telling part of the body.
You want me to guess?
Yeah, of course. That's the fun of it.
The most telling part. Okay, I want to think about this. It's not gonna be obvious, I know. Feet.
Nailed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't know why. I just guessed.
Yep. Uh, it's essentially kind of fight or flight. And so based on people's feet position, you can infer how they're feeling because it's a natural response. Like if you're trying to get out of there, you position your feet to get out of there. If you're positioning to stay and comfortable, your feet will be in a relaxed position and you're going to stay put. Um, Interesting.
That is fascinating. Huh. So are you looking? Well, you can't see our feet at Board of Governors because we've got those
You don't know
terrible.
what I can see. I can see.
People are like, what meetings are you two in? You guys don't want to know. Trust me.
I don't use it purely for board meetings. And by the way, in no way am I an expert on this. I just find it fascinating.
Well, I find it fascinating too. I find a lot of things fascinating. I'm just a curious person. I like to learn new things all the time. What I was going to say was today I'm going to finish my 23rd book this year,
Yeah,
and I read my age.
23 is like a decade for me.
I'm going to be 46 in a week and a half here. So my goal is 46 books this year, and I'm hitting the halfway point with 23 books. And I read all different kinds of books. And then my staff hates it because I'm like, so it's not on my desk right now, but they're reading Crucial Conversations. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's a great book.
Probably on point with the Super Communicators book that I've been reading. And I don't know, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble here, but I prefer TED Talks. I love 15 minutes of just some are good, some I find not so good, but just 15-minute consumable anecdotal stories with lessons I think are fantastic.
What's the most recent one you've listened or watched that you were like, wow, that was good? Because Tony will like it.
The one that comes to mind, I watch a lot of them because they're so consumable. There's one by a woman named Celeste Headaway, and I agree with most of it, not all of it, but the 10 things to do when having a conversation to make it more engaged. Because as she says, yeah, well, I shouldn't say it's her. There's no, all right, let me summarize the theory here. We're always trained on how to speak and how to present. We're not trained on how to listen. And if we could be better at listening, then you get into empathy and the connection is so much better. Mm-hmm. Everyone is listening to respond when you should be listening to listen.
So as we get closer into this, I want to know how do you support women in your life? Not just personally, but professionally.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm not a woman, so I don't necessarily understand maybe what you've encountered, but I do recognize that it's out there. And so when there's an opportunity to promote it, I want to embrace it in the right way to get everybody on board. And I don't know, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier in terms of I try and treat everybody the same. I recognize there are differences, but guess what? There's differences among men and a set of men, and there's differences of both. So I try and treat everyone equal, and I think that shines through. And I hope other folks, can replicate that and see that. No one. It doesn't matter what your gender is. I base it on who you are.
Yeah, and that, I mean, just a little peek into my life, or some people, not many people know this, but when there's stuff going down with me, who do I call? You're one of the people I call.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? Like,
no doubt.
I'm like, I got to call Ryan. And you're just, when you talk about empathy and that piece, the things that you're learning and you see, you definitely have that. I don't know. You and I hit it off immediately all those years ago.
Yeah. And listen, I'm vice versa. I can call you for feedback and support, help folks through things. And I understand not everybody's for everybody, but when you find that group of people that can support you, you should stick with them. And again, we've been able or fortunate enough to build a relationship where if I think you're wrong, I'm going to tell you you're wrong, and vice versa. You're going to tell me, I'm being an idiot. Okay, that's great. I'm being an idiot.
Yeah, we do. We definitely have that relationship where, because sometimes we're not, usually we're on the same side of things, but once in a while we're not. And we get mad at each other, but it's not like, I don't know, it's
Yeah, it's
different.
not
We just,
forever mad. It's like,
you know,
whatever. You're wrong.
right.
I think you're wrong. Okay, good. Get over it.
Yeah, we move on. I don't, and it's so special and unique. And like I talk about, like with my coaching clients, like who your personal board of directors are in
Yeah.
my life. And I
Yep.
think about who's in my board of directors, and you're definitely one of those people in my life that I know I can call at any point and say, hey, I'm about ready to throw myself off the Wings Event Center marquee out here. Or when I have a crazy idea where I'm like, I want to launch this women in sports
Yeah.
mentor
And then
mentee
I'll tell
program.
you it's a crazy idea, but all right, let's pare it back a little bit and then we're going to do it.
Yeah. And that's really, I'm really proud of what we're doing in the league with that, the mentor mentee program that we're launching this year, and the networking
Yeah.
that we're
And,
doing.
I got no shame in saying I'm shocked by how many women, I mean, 24 in total, which I think ended up being the perfect number. If you had 8, I would have thought that was great.
Yeah. And I called you from an airport last fall and said, I'd like to, and I'm like, I have this idea. And you're like, okay, you're always willing to hear me out and just support the initiatives that, I'm passionate about. And in Kalamazoo, like we dye the ice rainbow, like there's no limits to my,
Yeah, no, no, no. But look at how well that's been received. I
yeah.
mean, really cool idea. Fitting in Kalamazoo for a lot of reasons because of your history with Paint the Ice and your commitment to DEI and inclusion. So, pretty proud, quite honestly, that you guys were able to be the first.
Yeah, and we won a big award this year, as you know, but we've won league awards.
Yeah.
But we won a bigger award this year for the K Wings out on the national stage from the National Sports Forum for our diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. And that was, when I get asked questions about like what I'm most proud of, I mean, that's certainly all the DEI stuff comes to the list. And being recognized by the league is really important, but also outside of the league. And
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
yeah, it's pretty cool. So I have one more question for you.
Oh, boy.
And then we'll wrap this up. Yeah. So I'm going to give you so one of the things I love to know from my friends, my podcast guests, whatever, is something you've changed your mind about, because sometimes in life, especially as we get to middle age, it's like, oh, like we're not supposed to change. And I call bullshit on that because you knew me back when I used to drink, right? You knew Tony Party Time, and I talk about her on this podcast and other podcasts.
I don't know if I've ever heard Tony Party Time, but that's fantastic.
My friends used to call me that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I changed my mind about my relationship with alcohol, right? So I changed, and I stopped eating meat a couple years ago. I've changed my mind about, those are just some low hanging fruit things, but I've changed my mind about a lot of things. Like I threw my scale away a few weeks ago. I'm like, I'm done weighing myself. I'm not weighing myself anymore. I literally threw it in the trash. So I'm like changing my mind about all kinds of things. What are you changing your mind about these days?
Oh, man, this is a tough one for me. You want to talk about the women in my life? My wife and my mother would both tell you I don't change anything and that I'm stubborn. So
Your friend Tony will tell you that
yeah,
too.
so man, this is like the hardest question for me. Yeah, I probably the one I'm slowly changing on. So my oldest son, as you know, is, I don't know, slightly autistic or some level, not overly noticeable. And I think most folks would think he's just a normal kid, but he's taught me certain things in terms of I'm so rigid and fast in my ways, like it needs to be this way. And for him, that's a struggle, mostly in social settings. And so, trying to see the world through his eyes and going back to that empathy is probably what I'm changing the most. Like, there's social settings. I'm like, hey, man, let's just go do this. And it's debilitating to him. He can't, walk into a room and feel comfortable. And I'm usually the opposite. And so recognizing that that's out there. And that's, again, it goes back, it's partially why I'm reading these books, like, the ability to listen or recognize that, there are differing viewpoints, and not even viewpoints on something that's opinion, just day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're all going through something, right? And no, it's not what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you. Right. And we think about that when we're in spaces of dealing with difficult situations or people. And our best educators, I think, are our kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm learning, I guess, over time, and again, perhaps not very well, because I still, I try and raise him how I was raised and do this and do that, but he's just a different kid. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I have that conversation with my husband about our kids, and we're a blended family.
Yep.
And I'm like, Josh, this isn't the 1980s, right? Like, we're not going to be able to raise our kids the way we were raised, because one thing, this stuff, right? The technology changed everything, right? And so we got to remember that. And when our parents, raised us, they were probably sitting there saying, well, this isn't like being raised in the 50s and 60s.
No doubt.
Right. So, but I love that you're moving towards a growth mindset with that. Right. And you're just like, okay, because you're a great dad. I've seen you, and the kids are fantastic. But it's hard. Parenting is the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, I'm in this role, been with the ECHL for 18 years, could watch sports 24 hours a day. My oldest son could care less. No interest whatsoever. Thinks sports are stupid. So again, trying to understand that viewpoint and find something else to bond over, or come to an agreement on. So we've chosen chess. So that's a good fit.
You know how to play chess?
Yes, and he is fantastic.
Is he better than you?
Sometimes. It's very competitive right now, but in probably a year and a half, he'll whoop me.
It's funny. I don't know how to play chess, but Landon, he's 20 now. He tried to teach me, and my brain I don't get it.
Yeah, no, we're pretty addicted to it, but it took us a while to find it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Maybe you can teach me how to play chess, Ryan. We'll add it to the list of all the stuff we work on together.
Let's finish the Hockey Heritage event before we take on chess mastery.
Now, we have to promise each other this, that after this Hockey Heritage, that we're not doing one together again.
Yeah, this one will be recorded on video so we can cement it. The other one is just hypothetical in theory. It may or may not have happened. This one's
proof.
committed. Yeah.
There's no proof. So this is it. So I don't know what's going to happen if our staff will have to do it, not us.
Amen.
Well, this has been awesome. I learned new things about you today, and I didn't think I knew everything about you, but I learned even more new things. So I appreciate you coming on. And
no.
My cheerleader.
My pleasure. And what am I, like number 2 or number 3?
Oh, I've done how many? I think I've done at least 10 right now.
Oh, no kidding. All right.
Yeah. I got 4 more this week. I mean, and I've got a nice mix. Like in my alcohol-free world, I've got Josh did one, but he has to redo it because it wasn't very good. And so this week I'm interviewing Adam Goldberg for the Maine Mariners. He's coming on. So I've got Joe Roberts did one with me, and I've got some
that one's probably fantastic.
Oh yeah. So I'm going to have my mom and dad on. That one should be interesting.
Oh, very cool.
So, yeah, but they're going to need help with the technology. So
so did I. So what else is new?
Yeah, you did. Well, yeah, but that was kind of my fault too. So, but thanks again. And
all right.
Yeah, if anyone wants to find you, they can come to me first because you've got too much to do. So just
amen. Let's see how many other messages have come in during this interview, but it's all right. We'll get to them.
All right. I'll see you later.